What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to an edition of The Lion and the Physique. This is episode 10. Yeah, episode 10 is our 10th. It's our 10th anniversary, right? Our 10th episode together, The Lion and the Physique. What's going on, Todd? How we doing, man?
Good, right? How you doing?
I'm good. 1 week later, NPC universe has passed. Did you have any friends, any clients, anybody you knew competing at universe this year?
I did actually. One of my good buddies, Jack Singleton, competed in it. He did very well in light heavyweight category. Very proud of him. I know he didn't get what he was hoping for overall, but he did an amazing job. And that's part of the sport of bodybuilding is that it's not like you're just gonna just be first all the time. It's a lot of cases it's you go down, you go up, you go down, you go up, you go down, all the way to get to the top of the mountain. It's not usually an easy singular course to get to the top. But
There,
I'm
it's
very
funny
proud.
you say that. It's funny you say that because we had mentioned this last week about professional bodybuilders at the IFBB level, and I kind of
Mhm.
want to bring it, down a little bit just for us, and it's something I've been thinking a lot about. Is there is going to be bodybuilders, both male and female, and who knows, dude, we may be those bodybuilders as well that
Mhm.
never see center stage at the end of the night. Is that
Mhm.
something that, and that's something that like I started thinking about it and um, man, I was like, I'm like overthinking this a lot. So do you ever worry like, man, we may just be, and I always tease and I'm like, oh, I'm just, maybe that's really it. Like, is there a fear that, I don't want to say fear, it might not be the right word, that not just for us, but just in general in the sport, like, man, I never see that overall one day.
There is. I grew up in a background mostly sports related outside of bodybuilding. Bodybuilding is something I kind of knew about from like when I was my younger days from Pumping Iron. That was like the go-to movie to follow back then for
Yeah.
bodybuilding. It really wasn't much unless you wanted to go buy magazines or whatever, or maybe the occasional one guy in the gym that was like a bodybuilder. It was very rare back in the day when I was growing up to be around it. So I was mostly around sports, and sports is pretty much driven to be the best at it. Whether it's soccer or baseball or basketball or football, whatever. Your goal is to win. Your goal isn't to not break 500. Your goal is to become the best of the best and to win it. So it's kind of interesting to be in this kind of sport where it's most people don't become the best of the best. It's kind of a hard pill to swallow at times, especially when you go from a sports background where it's like, okay, go out there and dominate as best you can, and if you're not good at it, well, maybe this isn't your sport, kind of thing. So it's something that I've kind of thought about and grappled with. I think we all do at some point in time, especially when you're not the top person every single time. It can be really frustrating because you spend all that time, energy, effort, sacrifices to get there, and it's like, all right, well, I guess this is the best I'll do. Do I keep going? When do I stop? Or maybe I try something new? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Ryan?
I agree. I look at guys that place, second and third, and even at the NPC level, right? I mean, obviously, it's those guys are enhanced and they're on PEDs and stuff like that. And I look at guys that place, third time after time after time. I see guys that place fifth, sixth, seventh, guys that consistently compete year after year after year and never even crack the top three. And I'm like, wow, that guy's a better bodybuilder than me. So am I never going to crack the top three? Like, am I
Mm-hmm.
like, so I mean, obviously, selfishly, we always bring it back to us, right? Like, oh, that guy's a better bodybuilder than me. He's placed better than me at every show he's ever competed at. That must make him a better bodybuilder than me. Maybe, maybe not. I digress. But yeah, I feel that there's always kind of like we're always reaching for center stage, but there is only one spot, right? Like we are in a sport where, to your analogy with sports, it's like, hey, if Tom Brady had a great Super Bowl, the odds were that the Patriots were going to win the Super Bowl. It didn't
Mm-hmm.
matter what, the third string left tackle was doing on the bench. He was going to get a ring.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately for us, we're not in a sport where, let's say we all use the same coach and one of their athletes wins the overall at that show. We don't all get pro cards,
Right.
only one person does. And, there are times where, and I know I'm guilty of it. I don't want to assume anybody else is, but I'm sitting backstage and I'm going, okay, I think I got that guy okay, I
Mhm.
definitely, I may have that guy. You know, you're watching people go through their poses, and it's like, okay, I may have that guy beaten in my side chest. They may have
Mhm.
me in a front double. So you start doing that and you start playing with your own head. But yeah, this isn't a team sport, man. So it's like every time you step on that stage, there's literally only going to be one person. Like
Mhm.
in that division, in that class, on that day, we all can't win.
Right.
Some would make the argument that at the OCB, everybody gets a participation award, but um, which I'm sick of receiving at this point. I can't another fourth place trophy, or I'm gonna jump out a window. Um, we've talked very heavily. Obviously every episode we talk about the OCB. That's what we compete in, and that's what we promote. Um, but NPC recently announced a couple months ago that they would
Mhm.
be having an entirely natural organization. I don't have those details in front of me. I just know that there's already been some shows and they're rolling out shows, later this year. Um, I believe it's 3 years clean. I'm not sure the
Yes.
process on testing, for show day, or I don't think there's polys involved like there is with the OCB. Um, have you given any thought to moving to NPC now that they do have the natural organization?
I thought about it. I mean, it did pique my interest. I do like NPC a lot. The way they're in organizations, the amount of competitors they get, the broad reach they have, the quality of the people consistently overall is always top tier, obviously, because that's the way you go to become an IFBB pro. Um, I think if they really get heavily involved with it and actually start to really push it, they could be a threat to all the other, true natty organizations out there that continually do test people. I think they could be a real threat to everybody out there if they actually start pushing as much as the other organizations do, because they have such a lockdown on the fields.
Yeah, it seems like from a credibility standpoint, um, there's like what, three, four, five natural organizations, but NPC just stands above the rest. I think it's just the most credible organization. That's where the big dogs play, right? I mean, that's what it really comes down to. It's the best example I can give is if you want to go up against the best, the NPC is where you're going to find the best. Now, who knows what these natural shows are going to look like? I haven't had the opportunity to attend any. Um,
Mhm.
I mean, I do think 3 years is a short time. I know some guys who have won their pro cards within the last 3 years and have come completely off gear, and they're still freaks. They're still big dudes.
Mhm.
Granted, they consistently train and diet and stuff, but I'm really excited to see what the NPC can do. And I think that there's pros and cons to all of these organizations, but
Mhm.
I just want to focus on OCB versus NPC.
Mhm.
I'll ask you, and then we'll bounce it back to me, and I'll give my. Let's start with cons, right? So looking at OCB versus NPC, what are some cons to competing in each organization? We'll start with the OCB and then move over.
Well, the biggest one that you've talked about, we've talked about before, is the fact that depending on the OCB show, they don't get as many competitors as an NPC show does. NPC is then able to then break it down by height and weight classes to give everyone a fair shot, versus OCB, where if you go to compete in a category for bodybuilding, you can be 5'2", 130 pounds going against the guy who's 6'5", 210 pounds plus. That's a huge difference on stage to see that comparison against each other. I think that's a huge one. Is just that alone it would make it a lot easier. It's no different than any other sport, like boxing or anything else like that that has weight classes. There's a reason why they have weight classes, because it gives an unfair advantage to someone of a greater size to put them against someone smaller. Uh, that's probably the biggest driver I see for that. What about you? What about you, Rob? What's your thoughts on that?
When it comes to the OCB specifically, um,
Mhm.
yeah, the way that they break down their classes has been an issue in almost every show that I've competed at. This most recent one, the Jersey Natural, was the first time where I was standing up against guys that were my height. Granted, the weight discrepancy was unbelievable. I had mentioned that in last week's episode that the young man who took third over me had to be 30 pounds less than me. and that's not even me being dramatic. I showed you pictures after the fact, and at least 30 pounds lighter than me. You know, and to where the guys that were beating me were about 10, 11 pounds, you know, heavier than me. That just can't be the case. You know, the classic physique specifically, you know, because that's what I compete in. Height and weight, it's universal, right? That's how it is in the ANBF. That has the IBF. It's all these national organizations do height and weight. So why is the OCB the only one who is just doing height? It doesn't really make sense to me. Bodybuilding, I've almost noticed a similar trend recently where like everybody that I'm seeing getting up there is like one guy's 6'4", the other guy's 5'5". Are you guys putting in height and weight when you sign up? Is it like, what am I missing with bodybuilding that all these guys are just thrown up on stage together?
Right. Yeah. Because I don't remember seeing anything about weight class at all when I signed up for them. I know NPC, the times I did NPC, they definitely put what's your weight class in, and they weighed you on stage and height checked you before your show. I remember that, but I don't remember. I can't think of any time that I remember writing down on my application that they asked for what's your weight at currently.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, you know, to envision that, let's say in a perfect world, you compete open bodybuilding in the OCB, you go on to win overall, you're just an OCB bodybuilding pro. Like, are you a light heavyweight? Are you a welterweight? Like, do you have super heavyweight pros, or is it just everybody's an OCB bodybuilding pro? I really, really don't like that. And with OCB, I can never gauge the judging criteria. With the NPC, it's very clear, right? Size, structure, symmetry, conditioning, in no particular order. With the OCB, I know that they say that, but then you're just seeing so many, like, it's just no two shows are the same. And I guess you can make the argument that, oh, that's the same everywhere. But no, I mean, like, I can't gauge it at all. Like, you see a lineup get up on stage, and listen, I'm not saying that I've ever been the most conditioned or the biggest guy or anything like that. I'm not saying, I'm not trying to take anybody's flowers here, but I've never been able to look at a lineup in the OCB, and I truly mean this, and I really like to believe that I have a good eye for bodybuilding. I've never been able to look up at an OCB stage, and I emphasize the word never. I've been to 6 or 7 OCB shows. Honestly, never have been able to look at a lineup and go, that guy's going to win. Because now I've looked up at the stage and gone, well, that guy's the biggest, but that guy's the most conditioned, and that guy has perfect structure. I would probably go, 1, 2, 3, or here's your top 4. And then they kind of move you around so everybody can be center stage, whatever. And I'm like, okay, so I think it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then at finals, they come out for awards, and like, that guy was actually 5th and that guy was 3rd. And I'm like, what are these guys looking at? And then the next class comes out, and I'm like, okay, well, I thought this would be 1, 2, 3. And then it is. And I'm like, but they didn't judge this class remotely the same as they judged last class. So it's just very hard with the OCB to understand where their minds are at with their judging criteria, where I am confident at every NPC show I've ever seen, that guy's the biggest with the most conditioning and the best structure. There's no way that guy's going to lose. That guy has great conditioning, but he doesn't have his size. The guy with the size and the conditioning and the structure will always beat the guy who just has the conditioning, or the guy who just has the size. Have you ever seen anything different, or has it kind of been, hey, NPC judging has been pretty spot on?
NPC has been pretty spot on from what I've seen. 2 of the shows I'd been to, they actually did rescoring in the finals, because when the guys came out later on that night, there's a slight difference between what they presented in the prejudge and versus the finals, and they rescored it. And every time I've seen the rescoring, the other guy who was supposed to be quote unquote second ended up getting 1st place, which is what I like. I have yet to see that at one of the natural shows that I've been to, where they rescored everything based on what they see. But then again, OCB is different, because OCB just runs it all the way through. There's no real big break in between it all. It's just, okay, here, and then that's it. Then, okay, you go out, you do your solo, and then now it's time for awards. And there's no second round of this stuff. There's no like redo or anything like that. It's just, here, this is what it was. If you didn't do it then sorry. And I also too kind of wish that they would judge posing more. I mean, I think that's kind of a little bit of a lost art form. I think organizations should people for being like the best poser of the night. I think that helps that a lot. And that's pretty much what the sport is. It's not, I mean, if you really want to think about it as an art form, then the posing should be the top priority, how well you're posing up there. Because I've been up on stage where people who had no clue what they're doing, you know, placing higher, which they should be penalized against it, because that's what this is. It's like going to a karate tournament and then just the guy just doing whatever he wants to do up there and not actually following the actual form. Like if it's Taekwondo, they're doing jujitsu up there. And it's like, that's not what the sport is. It's supposed to be a Taekwondo. So forth. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, you cut out there a little bit at the end, but yeah, I've noticed that it's so rushed, right? And maybe as an entry level bodybuilder, right, or a beginner or a novice, right? It's exciting that you're going to be there backstage, you're going to get on stage, you're going to go through your poses, you're going to be compared, and then you're going to get your awards. You can go enjoy the day, right? Enjoy the day with your family. I have loved with the NPC that you're being judged in the morning. And when you come back at night, you better not look like a slob because you're getting up there again and you're going through it again. Now, granted, whether I know for a fact that they judge, you know, prejudging is where you're really being judged about 90%. And then that, you know, the end of the night is about 10% at finals. But you're right. OCB is very like, let's just assume you only compete in the open. You're out there for 5 minutes. You know,
Mm-hmm.
how are you really getting a good look at these guys? And, you know, you're going through everything and then you're off the stage and then you come out and you do your individuals and you know, and I don't know if you've ever done this, but when I do my individuals, I still notice that I'm looking down at the judges.
Mm-hmm.
They're never looking up. You might have out of a table of 6 or 7 judges, you might have one that's watching your routine. The rest of them maybe on their phone, looking at the judging and stuff like that. But you're right. I'm putting time into my routine. I know that the poses that I'm hitting are poses that are what's the word I'm looking for? But it's like it's flattering to my physique. There's a reason I pick these poses, and it's not even really being factored in. Now, I say that knowing that NPC does not judge your posing routines either.
Mm-hmm.
But the NPC is giving you that, hey, we judged you this morning. We're going to give you a little break to gather ourselves here. When we see you tonight, we're really going to know for sure if we're making the right decision. And the OCB doesn't do that. They rush you through it. Now, I digress because there's plenty wrong with the NPC, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's long days, right? It's nice that the days are separated, but just know that there's a pretty good chance you're starting this day around, depending on when you leave your house, right? Let's assume it's 7 a.m. because athlete check-ins are 8:30 or 9 o'clock, and then the show starts at 10 or whatever the case may be. You're probably going until about 9-10 o'clock at night, depending on when you're actually getting on stage. They're long days. It's a lot of food to be carrying around. It's a lot on your family and your friends. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
lot to ask of people. Hey, you going to come to the show? Well, I can make finals, but I can't make prejudging. Well, I can make prejudging, but I can't make finals. It's a lot to ask of your loved ones. You're going to be there no matter what. I would say one of the toughest things about NPC is, I mean, obviously we're natural athletes. That goes without saying. These guys are coming in as units. But let's just hyper focus on the NPC natural organization right now. And those shows is it's just a lot. It's a lot to ask of your body and of your loved ones and the people who want to support you. It's like, hey, this is going to be about a 12-hour day. Are you prepared for that? And are you prepared for that?
Yeah, I mean, I remember the 2 NPC shows I did. I mean, I was having to get up at 3:30 in the morning on that Saturday so I can get my second tan in and everything. And obviously you're amped up and you don't want to go to sleep after that. So, and then getting done by 8:30, 9 o'clock at night and still having to go home after that. It's like, man, I just put my body through the ringer on this one all day long. And, being that sleep deprived, I'm like, man, if I wasn't so sleep deprived, I think I could have done a little bit better.
Do you ever notice yeah, and it's happened with me with OCB as well. I haven't competed in an NPC show since 2018. There are times with OCB, or anytime I'm getting on stage, where I'm almost kind of over it backstage. And I don't want to be, but you start thinking about that meal and you start thinking about relaxing and you start thinking about your next training session. Like, man, I want to be in the moment, but I'm also like I use the Jersey Natural as a great example. Is I was so relaxed backstage and I was so
Mm.
mellow and I was like, yeah, I'm just ready to get out there. But I was still thinking about food. I was still I had some friends and my wife and my son were there and I loved, having everybody together, but I was excited to see them backstage and I'm talking to them, oh, we got it, I'm looking forward to training this week and oh, what are you going to eat after the show? All the stuff that your typical family and friends ask.
Mm.
And I'm like, man, did we line up yet? I'm like, like you almost kind of forget where you're at for a second. And I'm like, man, I'm thinking more about what I'm going to eat after this. Or, oh man, I still have an hour and a half drive home. Like,
Mm.
it's almost like
Yeah.
OCB's good in that sense where it's like, man, once I get off the stage, I'll get this trophy and I'm out of here. Whereas with the NPC, it's like, okay, once this is done, I can't really go anywhere, but there's like
Mm.
4 hours in between the two shows. I'm not going to go home and come back. Um, when I did the Brooklyn in 2018, yeah, it was the Brooklyn Grand Prix 2018. Miserable package, coached myself, worst physique I ever had. My tan was bad. I didn't pump
Mm.
up right. A buddy that I used for the last couple of weeks of prep was like, bring wine backstage with you. Make sure you're sipping on water. I'm pretty sure I got like a buzz before I went out on stage. I didn't know how much wine I was drinking or anything like that. It was only my second show ever, or my second bodybuilding show ever.
Mm.
Um, and I went out and then like I'm sitting in my car in between. I'm like, man, I just want to go home. Like I just want to leave. And I remember falling asleep in my car for hours. And it was like, man, it sucks. Like I just want to leave. The days are long. The days are long.
Very much so. Yeah. Yeah, I don't miss a lot of that. Yeah, and I just remember just sitting back there and just being like, man, I just want to go home already. I just want to get out of here and go home already. Let's
Yeah,
go.
100%. I will say with the NPC, there's a credibility factor there. And I'm not saying the
Mhm.
OCB lacks any credibility. With my job and my work, and you as well, you're being a not just in your work, but in being a personal trainer,
Mhm.
your side hustle. Um, we're engulfed right in this sport, and
Mhm.
I'm surrounded by both natural competitors and enhanced competitors, and part of my job is outreach, and I try to recruit athletes, and seeing universe this weekend, I've gotten on calls with a couple of the athletes that have competed, and it's like I feel selfishly that I lack credibility as an athlete because when someone will come up to you and say, "Oh, you compete? What show are you competing at?" And I'm like, I'm competing at the OCB Jersey Natural. I'm a natural competitor." And they go, all right, and okay, like yeah, I guess that's cool. Like I'm not going to take you seriously anymore.
Yeah.
Um, if they don't hear NPC before that show, you almost lose credibility. And I don't
Mhm.
want to assume that's ever happened to you, but can I ask, like, have you ever been in a situation where you've mentioned, like, yeah, I'm an OCB competitor? And you almost kind of, I don't want to say you feel, and again, maybe this is just a me thing because I have self esteem issues, but can you almost tell that people are like, ugh, you compete in the OCB? Like, the NPC is where the real players play. What are you doing in the OCB?
I get that more with the old timers that used to do this back in like the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, because that's all they had. All they had was the NPC, the IFBB. There was, and I think the AAU was the other big one at the time. That's all they had. Like there was no other path to become a professional bodybuilder. So when you mention this to them, they jumble the letters up when you say it. What is it, the BCO, the COB, or whatever thing you're doing or whatever, and they kind of do that not so much meanly, but like they just don't
Yeah,
know.
they just like that.
The the regular people I talk to, I don't really put the letters of the organization. Most regular people that I work with, because I don't work in the sports supplement industry like you do. I work in pharmaceutical industry, so I deal more with like people that necessarily don't really work out at all. They don't know much about this kind of stuff. And so I just tell them, I do bodybuilding stuff. Like, oh, that's cool, that's neat, that's interesting, or whatever. And same thing with the gym. Not everybody knows all the letters. How even people who do bodybuilding, they don't even, some of them don't even know who the NPC is. They don't even know what organizations to go if they wanted to go compete. They just do the bodybuilding thing. So it's kind of interesting. I remember back in the day, I analogy for people that that when it came to fitness and everything, if you had a table, right, you and your equal are sitting at tables, and I have a background, a degree in exercise science. I'm certified strength conditioning
You
specialist.
shared this example with us in the past. This is great. Go
My
ahead.
And then you put someone, pull the paperwork out and show these great things you did or whatever. And then you put someone next to you with all these like pictures and like trophies and stuff. They're going to listen to that person, over you. No matter how much it says that and you're certified and you're insured and the whole 9 yards, they'll go right to them and say, how do I do it? Where do I sign up? So a lot of
100%.
cases, what it comes down to is that, like, to the regular, civilian that doesn't do this stuff, I don't really mention organizational names. They just like, oh, you're the bodybuilding guy. You do bodybuilding stuff. But for the old timers, they're like, what the heck's the OCB stuff? Whatever. All I know is the NPC.
COB. That was funny. The COB.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for example, I've even talked to natural competitors, and they're like, "Oh, I'm doing the NPC this, and I'm doing the NPC that, and blah blah." And I'm like, "Oh, why wouldn't you just compete in the OCB?" And they're like, "Don't compete in the OCB. Like, I want competition. What?" So yeah, I thought that too. When 3 years ago, when I first did, or 2020, when I first did my first OCB show, my thought was, I'm gonna get on stage and I'm gonna blast these guys. And when I win my OCB Pro card, then I'll move over to NPC. It'll give me a little bit of credibility. And when I know I can beat these guys, then I'll go up against the enhanced guys. Because I just want to be able to belong, right? And every NPC show I competed in, I was 2nd out of 3. I was 3 out of 3. I was 4 out of 4. And I was just sick of it. I've actually competed in more OCB shows now than NPC. So I just want to get that, off the table. Yeah, I mean, talking to natural people or even enhanced, and they're like, why wouldn't you just go to the NPC? Go to the NPC. And I'm like, I thought I was going to go to the OCB shows and destroy everybody, and I'm still getting beat. Like, it's not like I'm like, these guys aren't chumps. Like, they're legit bodybuilders. And the OCB has been a great opportunity, been a real like reality check that just because the NPC has this level of credibility doesn't mean that they have the top level of competition, which I think in my situation, like, I needed to see firsthand. So with the NPC introducing, these natural shows, and apparently, and I could be, misquoting here, but I guess they're going to have a whole secondary of everything, right? They're going to have NPC Natural, then they're going to have NPC Universe Natural, and they're going to have these natural, pro qualifiers, and then you're going to be an IFBB Natural Pro, and the Olympia will have a natural, category, your natural classic physique champion, your net. I do believe that it will still kind of get looked down upon. Listen, men's physique gets looked down upon, right, in the IFBB, and those guys are all enhanced. But unless you're a bodybuilder or a classic physique guy, you're going to look down upon anyway. Which is, it is what it is. But I do think that the NPC has this aura about it, and it has a credibility, and it has like a pride factor to it. Now, last week we had both said, you win your OCB Pro card, probably be done, right? We pack it in.
Definitely.
My mind is still there. But I am going to probably dip my toe into this NPC Natural. I need to know what it's about. I'm curious. Not only do I think it helps from a credibility factor, and I kind of get that monkey and that weight off my back where I'm almost embarrassed to say that I compete in the OCB, and nobody ever should. And that's a total me thing. I know that. But there's almost like, oh, you compete? And I'm like, oh man, like, here we go again. Like, now I got to tell somebody why I'm natural and why I compete in the OCB. And like, it's just, dragging through the mud. So I think I'm going to dip my toe into these NPC Natural shows. I got a couple friends competing later this year, so I'm going to check these shows out. And I want to see what it's all about. I think it's legit. I think it's credible. I think they are going to do their best to not just maintain integrity, of natural competitors, but I think they want to make themselves. I laugh. Somebody once told me that the NPC is trying to become the next Disney, where they just want to own everything. Right now, they're going to own the natural organizations. They're going to try to squash everybody else. So I digress a little bit. I reel it in. I want to try the NPC Natural Shows.
I think that that's a pretty good approach to it. And I think the way you should look at it is just like we're big fans of pro wrestling, so it's like you're competing in like New Japan or you're competing in AEW, and
Yes.
oh, why aren't you in the WWE? Like that's the best of the best. And it's like, well, I'd love to, but there's other circumstances that prevent that from happening. But at the same time, if you're a champion of
Wow,
one of those
great
organizations,
example.
that doesn't necessarily make you any less of a champion if you're not a WWE champion. It's the same thing. And WWE put everything on lockdown for wrestling for quite a while before these other ones started back up again.
That's a great example. So I guess there's no show dates, in mind for either of us right now. Just enjoying our off seasons. Do you see yourself OCB through and through until the end, or is there a chance we get you back on an NPC Natty stage before Todd hangs them up?
I have to take a look to see how this Natty is. My biggest concerns are like from a fitness point of view and a scientific point of view, that when you do use these enhancing substances, that they have shown that the effects of it don't just necessarily go away once you stop after a couple of years, as long as you're consistent with your workouts and everything. A lot of the new muscle tissue you build and the new satellite muscle cells that you create, or satellite cells that you create that go to muscle building, stay with you in some cases for life. So if you had only so many before you started using them, by default of using this, you're going to have naturally more with you, whether you want to or not. So those guys and girls that use this stuff are still going to have the after effects of it for quite some time, if not forever. So it's like, I got to see, like, you could go there and just blast all this stuff for like a couple of years, take your time off for like 3 years, and then guess what? Now I'm ready to come on stage or whatever. And it's like, that's really not the whole point of this whole natty thing. It's supposed to be that you're natural. You're not using anything like that could enhance your physique like that. But I'll have to see. I'll have to see if they do polygraph testing. I would love it if they actually did blood work testing. I know it's very expensive, but that would be the ultimate determiner. I mean, your analysis is fine, but I think blood work is really where it's at. It's what they use for all the sports that test for that kind of stuff. It's the blood work. They look at your blood, and that's the easiest way to tell whether you are or you aren't. So,
All right, man. Listen, I think this is a great place to stop for the day. Another great episode. I think we touched on a lot of good things here about weighing the pros and cons of just bodybuilding in general. Competing in the NPC versus the OCB, and really kind of wanting to know what this NPC Natural Organization is going to be all about, because I think a lot of people feel the way that I do from a credibility standpoint. And I'm very curious to see if we start seeing these classes at the OCB, which they cannot afford, to start getting smaller. All right, dude. Any final words? Anything you want to wrap up with?
Nope, I think that's it, Ryan. I think we hit it all on the head on this episode.
Awesome, dude. So thank you everybody for watching as always. Todd, thank you. Hopefully we'll catch up again next week. And thank you everybody for stopping by the framework.